Let's talk about rest without guilt. The guilt that arrives the moment you stop. Like you sit down, you lie down, you close your laptop, you have a free afternoon, genuinely free. Nothing urgent, you don't need to be anywhere. And within seconds, you feel that you should be doing something, that you're falling behind, and that there are people who need you, and that it's selfish to just sit there, and you haven't earned this. Rest becomes another kind of effort, the effort of arguing with your own guilt, like you're defending your right to exist without being productive. And rest becomes a source of distress. If you watched my last video on what guilt actually is, welcome back. If you haven't, I encourage you to watch it first, because it gives us the foundation that we're building on today. Let's name what's actually happening when rest produces guilt. It doesn't happen for everyone equally. Some people can genuinely stop and feel it as relief. Others, if you're watching this video, you might be one of them, cannot rest without guilt. Somewhere in your history, in your family, in your early relational environment, in the messages you observed from culture or religion or the people who raised you, you learned something about the meaning of stopping. And what you may have learned is this: activity equals safety. When you're doing something, being useful, being productive, being available, taking care of something or someone, you are in a state that your nervous system recognizes as acceptable, and your value is visible. Your presence becomes justified because the people around you are satisfied with you, and nothing bad is happening because you are preventing it from happening. But when you stop, when you're not useful, not productive, not orienting yourself towards someone else's need, your nervous system reads this as exposure and risk. And you feel like something could go wrong and you can prevent it. This is your nervous system pattern. It is maintained by guilt, the emotion that has been trained to appear precisely when you deviate from the learned rule that stopping is dangerous. Where does it come from? Well, think about families in which this pattern most commonly develops. These are families where love was conditional on performance and approval had to be earned. Being demanding and having needs was a problem. Or families where parents' emotional state was fragile and the child became an emotional regulator for that parent, watching, adjusting, ensuring that the parent was okay. Or families where they had genuine crisis and everyone genuinely did need to be in a state of constant management. In all of these contexts, a child learns, I cannot fully stop. Something needs me. And if I stop and something goes wrong, it will be because I stopped. And then this child grows up, the original context changes, but the nervous system patterns remains, the guilt remains. And now you are an adult, possibly a parent, professional, maybe someone holding a great deal of responsibility, and you cannot sit in a quiet room for 20 minutes without a prosecution beginning in your own head. And I want to spend some time here on the physiology, because I think when you understand what rest is doing, it becomes harder to frame it as optional or indulgent. Your nervous system operates through two primary modes. You, I'm sure, heard of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. Sympathetic is activation, the fight, flight, mobilization, increased heart rate, cortisol, alertness. And parasympathetic is regulation, the rest and digest state. Your heart rate changes, digestion resumes, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for reasoning, regulation, decision-making, it becomes more accessible. Chronic activation of the sympathetic system, which is what happens when you never fully rest, has consequences. Dysregulation, immune suppression, sleep disruption, reduced capacity for empathy. Yes, it's ironic, given that many people who cannot rest are refusing rest precisely because of their concern for others. You're not more available to the people who need you when you are chronically dysregulated. You are less so. And the part that I think is the most relevant to our conversation about guilt is that the parasympathetic state, genuine rest, genuine down regulation, is not just recovery, but it's that time when your brain consolidates memory, integrates experience, move things from active working memory into something more organized and less charged. Sleep is the most obvious version of this, but stillness, non-doing serves a similar function. When you refuse to rest, you're not just depleting your physical resources, you're preventing your nervous system from doing the processing it needs to do in order for you to actually function well, to have access to your emotional experience, think clearly, be present with the people you love. In other words, the guilt that says you should be doing something useful is ironically sabotaging your actual capacity to be useful. I want to name the specific forms this guilt takes because I think recognition is the first step toward having any choice in how you respond. Like you say, I haven't earned it. This is one of the most common. You can rest after you've done enough, but the threshold of enough keeps moving because there's always more that could be done. And so rest is always deferred. The belief underneath this is that rest is a reward, not a need. And this is simply not true biologically. Rest is not a luxury granted to the productive. It is a physiological requirement like water, food. You do not need to earn your need for water. Or you're saying, other people are struggling or suffering and I cannot rest. This is comparative guilt. How can I rest when someone is dealing with something horrible? And this one is particularly sticky for people who work in helping professions or are caregivers or are in tune to suffering around them. The belief underneath is my rest is somehow in competition with other people's well-being. As if your resting makes less resource available to them, but your depletion does not help them. Your recovery actually increases your capacity to show up. Another one, I'm being selfish. It's most often a sign that word selfish was installed in you earlier. You feel selfish for taking up space, for being oriented toward yourself. Genuine selfishness, the kind that actually harms others, that takes from them at their expense, is a real thing, but needing rest is not, or you think something bad will happen if I stop. This is the most primitive one, the closest to the original learning when you were not fully conscious. This is the nervous system saying, we are not safe here. Not because anything is actually threatening, but because stopping has been coded as unsafe for so long that it is now an automatic response. This one needs more than a reframe. It needs gentle, consistent practice. When you're gradually allowing the nervous system to have the experience of stopping and nothing bad happening, over time, this updates this pattern. Another one, I will lose momentum. I hear it a lot. This is the high achiever version. Guilt disguised as strategy. Believe that stopping means losing something, falling behind, becoming soft or slow. And again, the biology actually inverts this. Rest improves cognitive performance, creativity, and decision making. The momentum you're afraid of losing is actually sustained by recovery, not threatened by it. I want to return to something I talked about in the first video, the experience of being an emotional container for others, because I think this is one of the least discussed and most exhausting dimensions of guilt around rest. When you have spent years, possibly a lifetime, as many of my viewers, being the person who holds other people's emotional worlds, rest becomes conceptually inaccessible because rest requires you to be in your own experience, to put down the monitoring, tracking, anticipating, stop being a surface for other people's needs to land on. And if you've never had practice doing that, if being a container has been so central to your role identity and your sense of value, then the act of putting it down doesn't feel like relief. It feels like abandonment. It feels like you're failing someone, betraying someone, like you're selfish, responsible. And this is where rational guilt does its most insidious work, because the person you might be abandoning in the moment of rest may not even need you right now. And I want to offer you something here. You are allowed to have an interior life that belongs to you and you only. You're allowed to close a door physically or emotionally and have your own experience for a period of time. You're allowed to not know in real time how everyone around you is feeling. This is not a betrayal of the people you love. It's the only sustainable way to be in relationship with them and with yourself. A container that is never allowed to be empty, that is never cleaned, never allowed to breathe, never filled, eventually cracks, and then it cannot hold anything. Your rest is not just for you. It is what makes you a sustainable presence for everyone you do care about. Because you are a caring person, and I'm not saying that you need to stop. No, it's great. I'm talking about self-care. And I want to be honest with you. Resting without guilt is not a state you arrive at easily. It is a practice. At the beginning, you won't feel restful. Here's what practice might actually look like. Notice the guilt without obeying it. When you sit down to rest and the guilt appears, which it will, you don't have to fight it. You also don't have to get up and do the thing it's pointing toward. You can simply notice it. Here's the guilt. It thinks I should be doing something. I'm going to stay here and rest anyway. You are not pretending the guilt isn't there. You are relating to it, but differently. You respect it as information, not as directive you must follow. Now give the guilt language, because guilt often lives in the body as activation rather than words. And when you give it language, it can help you to regulate it. You can say, I'm in my living room on a Saturday afternoon, nothing bad is happening. I can rest calmly. Allow rest to be imperfect. Real rest does not always look like, I don't know, blissful nap. Sometimes it looks like just sitting in a slightly uncomfortable silence for 10 minutes. Sometimes it looks like reading something with no practical purpose. Track what happens in your body. As you allow rest, even imperfect, guilty rest, begin to notice what your body actually does. Is there a moment, even brief, when something softens, where your breath changes, where the monitoring slightly goes away? This is information. This is your nervous system beginning to learn that stopping is survivable. Celebrate this moment. It is meaningful, and protect it from yourself. One of the most practical things I can tell you, you will try to undermine your own rest. You will check your phone. You will think of something that needs doing. You will solve a problem in your head while kind of resting. And it's okay. Notice it, gently redirect, and come back to the rest again and again. This is the practice. And I want to end this video with something that I think is the deepest refrain in all of this. Rest is not something you earn by being productive. It is not something you deserve only after you have done enough. It is not a reward for being a good enough caregiver or parent or partner. Rest is something your body requires, your nervous system requires, your capacity for genuine presence and connection requires. The guilt that says otherwise is not telling you the truth about your worth. It is telling you about your history, about what you learned in an environment where your needs may not have been met and were not primary, and stopping felt dangerous and your value was conditional on your function. Learning can be updated, not all at once, but gradually, through the practice of staying, even when the guilt says to go, even when the monitoring tries to begin, or when everything in you says, this is not okay. It is okay. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to rest, not because you've earned it, but because you are human, and this is what humans require. I'll see you in the next one. And let me know, how are you resting, or how are you planning to rest? Take care.